You know that voice in your head that never shuts up? The one that reminds you about the email you forgot to send at 3 in the morning? The one that replays every awkward conversation you had 6 years ago? The one that catastrophizes every minor decision into a life altering disaster? Most people call this anxiety. Therapists call it rumination. Your friends probably call it exhausting. But what if I told you that this exact trait, the thing you have been trying to medicate away or meditate into silence, is actually the cognitive foundation of generational wealth, not despite the worry, because of it. Today, we are going to explore why the most successful wealth builders in history were not the confident risk takers. They were the chronic worriers, the overthinkers, the people who could not stop planning for disasters that might never happen. Let's start with a hard truth. Society has sold you a lie about wealth creation. We worship the fearless entrepreneur who bets everything on red, the visionary who ignores the doubters and follows their gut, the confident CEO who makes billion-dollar decisions in seconds. But when researchers actually study the people who built multi-generational fortunes, the ones whose wealth survived decades and even centuries, they found something shocking. These people were terrified. Not sometimes, all the time. A study from the Wharton School analyzed the psychological profiles of families who maintained wealth across 3 or more generations. They called these families centennial wealth holders. The common trait was not confidence, it was paranoia. Specifically, a trait psychologists call defensive pessimism. These are people who expect the worst outcome in every scenario, not because they are depressed, but because they are preparing. Your brain, if you are a chronic worrier, operates on a different frequency than most people. Neuroscientists have identified a specific neural network called the salience network. This is the part of your brain that detects threats and assigns importance to information. In most people, this network fires occasionally when there is actual danger, but in chronic worriers, this network is hyperactive. It fires constantly. You walk into a room and your brain immediately starts calculating risks. Who might judge you? What could go wrong? How to escape if things get bad? This feels exhausting because it is. Your brain is running threat detection software 24/7. But here's what most people miss. This is not a bug. It is the most sophisticated risk management system nature ever created. Think about it. The people who survived in early human history were not the optimists who assumed everything would work out. They were the worriers who saw the predator in the bushes before everyone else did. The ones who stockpiled food because they assumed winter would be harsh. The ones who planned escape routes because they knew danger was always possible. Your ancestors survived because they worried, and they passed that trait directly to you. Now let's talk about how this translates to wealth. Most people think wealth is built through bold moves, big risks, confidence, but that is how wealth is gambled, not built. Real wealth, the kind that lasts, is built through one thing: protection. Chronic worriers are world class at protection. You see threats that others miss. You plan for scenarios that others dismiss as unlikely. You save when others spend because you know the good times will not last. This is not fear. This is strategic foresight. Let me give you an example: the Rothschild family, one of the wealthiest dynasties in human history. Their fortune has lasted over 200 years. How? Not through bold risk-taking, through obsessive risk management. Mayer Amschel Rothschild, the patriarch, was famous for one thing. He worried about everything. He did not trust banks, so he created his own. He did not trust governments, so he diversified across 5 countries. He did not trust his competitors, so he built an intelligence network faster than any government. Every decision was driven by one question: what could go wrong? And that question made him untouchable. Because while his competitors were celebrating their wins, he was preparing for their losses. Your brain works the same way. When you lie awake at night thinking about all the ways your business could fail, you are not being irrational. You are running scenario simulations. When you obsessively review your budget, you are not being controlling. You are building financial immunity. When you question every investment opportunity, you are not being negative. You are practicing due diligence. The problem is not the worrying. The problem is that you have been taught to see it as weakness. Let's get scientific for a moment. Researchers at the University of California studied the brains of chronic worriers using fMRI imaging. They found that worriers have significantly more activity in the prefrontal cortex during decision making. This is the part of your brain responsible for planning and consequence analysis. What does this mean? When a normal person makes a decision, they might consider 3 or 4 outcomes. When a chronic worrier makes a decision, they consider 30 or 40. You are not overthinking. You are thinking at a higher resolution than most people are capable of. This is why worriers make terrible gamblers, but incredible investors. Gambling requires you to ignore risk. Investing requires you to quantify it. Your brain is built for the second one. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Most chronic worriers never build wealth, not because they lack the cognitive capacity, but because they get paralyzed by the very thing that makes them powerful. This is the gap between potential and execution. Let me explain. There are 2 types of worriers: productive worriers and destructive worriers. A productive worrier uses their anxiety as fuel. They see a risk and they build a system to mitigate it. They imagine a disaster and they create a contingency plans. They feel financial fear and they automate their savings. A destructive worrier uses their anxiety as evidence. They see a risk and they freeze. They imagine a disaster and they avoid taking action entirely. They feel financial fear and they do nothing. Same brain, same trait, completely different outcomes. The difference is not personality, it is process. Productive worriers have learned to channel their worry into action loops. Here's how it works. Step 1 is acknowledge the worry. Do not fight it. Do not try to be positive. Write it down. What specifically are you afraid of? Step 2 is probability assessment. What is the actual likelihood of this happening? Not how it feels. What does the data say? Step 3 is mitigation planning. If this does happen, what is your backup plan? What can you do right now to reduce the impact? And step 4 is action threshold. Set a clear rule. If X happens, I will do Y. This removes the decision-making burden in the moment of crisis. This is the exact framework that separates billionaires from broke worriers. Both see the same risks. One builds systems around them, the other drowns in them. Let me give you a real example. During the 2008 financial crisis, most investors lost 30 to 50% of their portfolios. But a small group of chronic worriers, people who had been obsessively preparing for a market crash, made fortunes. They were not smarter, they were more worried, and they had systems in place. They had cash reserves ready. They had hedging strategies active. They had contingency plans written down years before the crash happened. When everyone else panicked, they executed. Your worry is only valuable if it leads to preparations. Otherwise, it is just noise. Now let's talk about the dark side. Because chronic worrying has a very real cost. It drains your energy, it damages your relationships, it can lead to burnout if you do not manage it correctly. This is why chronic worriers need what I call worry boundaries. You cannot worry all the time about everything. That is a recipe for collapse. Instead, you need to assign your worry to specific domains. Schedule it. I am serious. Research from Penn State shows that scheduled worry time actually reduces overall anxiety. Here's how it works. Every day, set aside 20 minutes. This is your worry window. During this time, you write down every fear, every risk, every disaster scenario your brain generates. You do not solve them yet. You just capture them. Outside of this window, when a worry pops up, you tell your brain, not now. We will address this during worry time. This does 2 things. First, it prevents worry from hijacking your entire day. Second, it trains your brain that worry has a place and a purpose. You are not suppressing it, you are organizing it. And organized worry is the foundation of strategic planning. Now let's address the money part directly. How do you actually use chronic worry to build wealth? Here's the framework. First, automate your fear response. Whatever you are most afraid of financially, automate a solution. Afraid of losing your job? Automate 6 months of expenses into a separate account. Afraid of market crashes? Automate contributions to both stocks and bonds. Afraid of being broke in retirement? Automate retirement contributions before you even see your paycheck. Your worry should never require willpower. It should trigger automatic systems. Second, Use worst case scenarios as design tools. Most people avoid thinking about disasters. You cannot stop thinking about them. Use that. Write down your worst financial nightmare. Be specific. What happens if you lose your job, your health, and your savings all at once? Now, reverse engineer protection. What would make that scenario survivable? That is your financial infrastructure. Third, turn worry into due diligence. Before any major financial decision, create a pre-mortem. This is a technique used by elite investors. Imagine the decision has already failed. Now explain why. What went wrong? What did you miss? What assumptions were false? This exercise uses your natural catastrophic thinking as a research tool. You are not being negative, you are being thorough. And fourth, build asymmetric bets. This is critical. Chronic worriers should never make bets where losing hurts more than winning helps. Your investments should have limited downside and unlimited upside. This matches your psychology. You can handle small losses because you expect them, but you cannot handle catastrophic ones. So structure everything to protect the downside first. Let me be very clear about something. This is not about becoming fearless. You will never be fearless, and that is your advantage. Fearless people take stupid risks. They lose everything and call it learning. You will never lose everything because your brain will not let you. But you need to stop seeing that as a character flaw. It is a survival mechanism. And when directed correctly, it is a wealth building mechanism. There's one final piece we need to address: the identity shift. Right now, you probably identify as an anxious person, someone who worries too much, someone who needs to relax, someone who needs to be fixed. I want you to reframe that entirely. You are not anxious. You are a risk analyst. Your brain is running advanced threat detection software that most people do not have access to. You are not overthinking. You are conducting scenario planning. You are not being negative. You are being realistic in a world that worships toxic positivity. This identity shift changes everything because once you see your worry as a tool instead of a burden, you start using it strategically. You stop apologizing for it, you stop trying to fix it, and you start leveraging it. Here's my challenge for you. For the next 30 days, run this experiment. Every time you feel financial worry, do not suppress it. Channel it. Write down the specific fear. Assign a probability. Create one action step that reduces the risk, and then execute that step immediately. Do not wait. Do not overthink the action. Just do it. By the end of 30 days, you will have 30 risk mitigation systems in place. That is 30 more than most people build in a lifetime. And that is how chronic worriers quietly become the wealthiest people in the room, not by changing who they are, but by using who they are. If you found this helpful, I have created a free guide that breaks down the exact worry to wealth framework. It includes the daily worry journal template, the pre-mortem checklist, and the automated protection systems you can set up this week. The link is in the description. Next week, we are going to explore the psychology of people who hate spending money, and why that trait, which society calls stingy, is actually the cornerstone of financial independence. I will see you then.